I remember the exact moment I realized my husband wasn't cheating on me. I wish he had been. That would have been simpler. That would have been forgivable. The red on-air light in our living room was usually my cue to disappear. David didn't want me in the background during his live streams. He said it broke the narrative. He said viewers needed to believe he was alone, sacrificing everything for his mother, Mary. I didn't question it then. I was too busy working 60-hour weeks to pay our bills, while he sat in front of a ring light, telling thousands of strangers how hard his life was. I'm Sarah, and this is the story of how I discovered my husband wasn't just a liar, he was a predator. To his online audience, David was the saint of Suburbia, the devoted son who gave up his career to care for his ailing mother. Every day at 10 in the morning, he'd go live. He'd spoon-feed Mary, wiping her chin with exaggerated tenderness. He'd speak softly about her specialized medication and therapy sessions that insurance allegedly didn't cover. He played the martyr perfectly. What his thousands of followers didn't know was that I was the one paying for everything. I was the breadwinner. I was the one keeping us afloat. And somehow, we were always broke. It started with small suspicions. I'd ask David where the money was going, and he'd say he'd invested in Mary's care. But when I looked at her, I didn't see improvement. I saw a woman who looked more disheveled every day. Her hair was unkempt when the cameras weren't rolling. She seemed weaker, not stronger. Then came the phone. One evening, while David was in the shower, I heard a notification ping from somewhere in the living room. I found it between the sofa cushions, a burner phone I'd never seen before. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. What I found wasn't just infidelity, it was a criminal operation. There were messages to dozens of women between 45 and 65 years old, women who had commented on his live streams with heart emojis, women who had shared their own stories of caregiving, and David had responded to every single one. But he didn't start with romance. He started with vulnerability. "Thank you for your kind words," he'd written. "It's so lonely doing this by myself. Sarah, my wife, she just doesn't understand. She wants to put mom in a home." He had villainized me. He had painted me as cold and heartless, while positioning himself and these women as the only ones who care. He created an us versus the world dynamic with each of them. Then came the money requests. Mary needed a specific wheelchair not covered by Medicare. The heater broke in the middle of winter, and Mary was freezing. He was methodical. I found a spreadsheet where he documented which lie he told to which woman. To one, he was a misunderstood poet. To another, a former businessman down on his luck. The amounts ranged from $500 to $10,000 per victim. He instructed them to use peer-to-peer payment apps and label the transactions as gifts to avoid fraud detection. Over $60,000 stolen from women who thought they were helping a suffering saint care for their mother. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was what I found in the deleted folder. There were videos, outtakes from his live streams. In them, David screamed at his mother, "Sit up straight, look sadder." He was depriving her of food before streams, so she would look weak and accept the spoon-feeding more eagerly. This wasn't fraud. This was elder abuse. The $60,000 wasn't going to Mary's care. It was going to online gambling sites and hidden crypto wallets. Every donation was a crime. And by living in that house, I could be implicated if I didn't act. I needed to expose him. I needed undeniable proof, and I needed the world to see who the saint really was. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday afternoon. David was in the middle of a tearful monologue, asking for donations for a life-saving surgery that didn't exist. He had the ring light on, the filters active, the tears flowing. 3,000 people were watching live. I walked into the room. Usually, I was forbidden from entering during broadcast hours. David looked up, panic flashing in his eyes, and he tried to mute the audio.
But I was faster. I didn't scream, I didn't yell. I simply walked over to Mary, handed her a sandwich, and then I turned the camera to face myself. "He's lying to you," I told those 3,000 people watching. "Mary doesn't need surgery. He lost your money gambling, and I have the police on the way." David lunged for the phone, knocking it over. The stream didn't cut. It fell to the floor, facing up. For the next 3 minutes, the audience heard the raw, unfiltered audio of his rage. The mask slipped completely. He screamed about his business being ruined. The saint was dead. The predator was revealed. The fallout was immediate. Viewers screen-recorded the incident and it went viral within hours. The local police used that footage, combined with my evidence of the wire transfers, to arrest David. He was charged with multiple counts of wire fraud and elder abuse. I want to be clear about something. I didn't do this for revenge. I did this because I couldn't live with the knowledge that more women would fall victim to his manipulation. I did this because my mother-in-law deserved dignity and care, not exploitation. According to recent data, over 59,000 romance scam victims reported losses totaling $1.17 billion in the last year alone. The primary targets are individuals over 50 years old. But what happened in my home proves that scammers don't always operate from overseas call centers with AI-generated photos. Sometimes they're sitting in your living room. Sometimes they're the person you married. If you are talking to someone online who asks for money, no matter how noble the cause, no matter how sad the story, that is your red flag. Never send money to someone you haven't met in person. Never ignore the small inconsistencies that don't add up. I ignored them, and it cost dozens of women their life savings. It cost my mother-in-law dignity. It cost me my marriage and my sense of safety in my own home. But it also taught me this: the most dangerous scammers aren't the ones who look like criminals. They're the ones who look like saints. Stay safe out there. And if something doesn't add up, trust that instinct. Because I didn't, and I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I had.